morning, this is Kelsey from Kelsey Reads Things, also known as Librarians Recommend at Anna Porter Public Library. And today I'm going to do a video about audiobooks. I personally am a big fan of audiobooks, especially because I am a busy person who has to commute pretty far from work to home. It's about a 25-minute drive, so a lot of times in the mornings I'll wake up, throw on an audiobook while I'm getting ready, and then listen to it all the way to work, and sometimes while I'm even at work doing tasks that don't require a lot of mind power, so to speak. Books are great for people like myself who are very busy and who don't always have time to sit down and physically read. You can purchase audiobooks via Audible, which is, a subscription that is available through Amazon, or you could go and download Libby, which I've mentioned before in my previous videos. Libby is a free app provided by local libraries, public libraries, where you can download and audiobooks completely for free. So either one of these services are an excellent option for busy parents, busy educators, busy people in general. But yeah, it's just something that I should mention and that I should suggest, or I believed that I should suggest to my audience. Today I'm going to be discussing audiobooks that I have listened to, and I'm going to be kind of divvying them out based on categories. Now, I'm not going to be discussing every single audiobook I've listened to this year because there's quite a few. However, I will say that I eventually we'll be discussing LGBTQ titles I've listened to, rom-coms / coming-of-age titles, comedies, and fantasy romance, and finally nonfiction / lifestyle titles. And I'm also going to be kind of discussing some elements and whether or not I was a fan of said elements, including narrator, pacing, tone, themes, and whether or not there was music with the audiobooks. So now I'm going to just give you a list of all of the audiobooks I have listened to this year. That includes Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey Quiston, Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera, Again But Better by Christine Riccio, One Day in December by Josie Silver, Yes Please by Amy Poehler, City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, The Little Book of Huga by Meek Wiking, Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, which I'm currently listening to, by Bridget Kemmerer, The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, Succubus Blues by Rochelle Mead, The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, A Court in Thorns and Roses, my favorite series by Sarah J. Maas, and finally So Close to Being the Y'all Don't Even Know by Retta. Now today, to condense all of these titles down, I'm only going to be discussing my favorite fantasy / romance audiobooks that I listened to this year / last year, within the last year of my life. So September last year, I finally started listening to the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. I started with book 1, obviously, and as soon as I was done listening to the recorded, I bought all of them. I thought the original narrator did a fantastic job. I believe she really captured Feyre's personality, and her, she's described as like a rose. She has thorns. And I would be prickly too if I grew up in Feyre's situation. So I think that she did a very good job. I thought the pacing was great, the tone of all the characters. This narrator was very good at giving them individual personalities, and that's just, not every narrator is great at that. And also, I tend to avoid sometimes classic fantasy audiobooks because for whatever reason they always hire an older gentleman who has a very monotone sort of voice, and I personally am just not going to listen to that, or at least not for long. So I was appreciative of the fact that for the most part I enjoyed the narration of nearly every book I listened to this year. Now that doesn't always mean I'll give up on a book if I don't like the narrator, but it really just depends on my mood and my patience level at that time. So I will say I loved her voice, And I should mention by book 3 in that series, the narrator does change. It goes from Jennifer Ikeda to Amanda Lee Cobb, and I honestly think Amanda did a fantastic job, just as well as Jennifer, if not better. I think that she brought a different sort of perspective to Feyre, and Feyre is also a very different person by book 3, and I think she takes that into account and really creates her own version of this character. So I personally usually don't like when the narrator changes mid-series. However, I was honestly pleasantly surprised by this, and especially considering it's my favorite series of all time. I'd say that's pretty great. So I definitely recommend A Court of Thorns and Roses series, an audiobook or ebook or physical copy. I have definitely read and listened to like all versions that you can of this series. So good. One series that is similar, and I'm listening to it right now, is A Curse So Dark and Lonely. The narrator for that is, let's see, well, there's 3. There's Kate Hanford, who voices Harper, Davis Brooks, who I believe voices Ren, and Matt Reeves, who voices Gray. And those are the 3 main characters in this audiobook, and honestly, I'm really enjoying it. It has similar themes to A Court of Thorns and Roses. There's definitely a classic fantasy fairy tale retelling sort of vibe going on, very similar to Beauty and the Beast, very similar to East of the Sun, West of the Moon, and I think that's why I wanted to pick it up and why I like it so much. And I enjoy that I actually have male characters voice, or male people voicing male characters. That's really interesting and refreshing, because you don't always have that in audiobooks. A lot of times you have males voicing female character voices, and vice versa, females voicing males. So it's really nice to actually have individual voices for all of these characters. So great job on that, whoever creates and develops audiobooks. Thank you. That was brilliant. Another audiobook I've listened to this year was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and the narrator for that was Caitlin Kelly. I thought Caitlin Kelly did a great job with Jude specifically. She definitely encompassed all of Jude's personality. I personally am not a fan of this series, though. I did not finish it, so I can't really attest to whether or not the narrator changes by book 3. I did listen to about halfway through book 2, and I personally just wasn't a fan of the way the story was progressing, or really any of the characters. So that's why I stopped listening to it. However, in terms of how well the audiobook was done, I thought the pacing was fine. I thought the narrator did a good job at what she was supposed to be doing in terms of, you know, categorizing each character. And I do believe there is a little bit of music in the beginning of the audiobook. So some people really like that. Just thought it's something I might mention. I've listened to Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. It was an incredible audiobook. I thought the narrator for that did such a good job, and the narrator for that book was Elizabeth Evans. She really created Bryce with her voice in her own way. Bryce is the main character, and it is a long audiobook. You should know it is 30 hours. So this is a great book for those of us who definitely have, you know, enjoy having background noise. You know, especially if you want to pay attention to that background noise. It was great for when I was, you know, running outside or getting ready in the morning. So it'll definitely last a while too. And just so you know, this book is a fantasy romance, but it's also a mystery, and it's a modern slash slightly maybe more contemporary urban fantasy. So that's just something you should keep in mind. I also listened to City of Bones by Cassandra Clare this year, and the narrator for City of Bones was Mae Whitman. I personally, and this might be a little bit shallow, I was not a fan of her voice specifically. I think she made Clary really whiny, but at the same time, I have to keep in mind that Clary and all these other characters are like 17, 18 years old max. I'm pretty sure Clary is actually 15 when the book starts, and she's about to turn 16. So maybe that's something I just need to keep in mind, and maybe I'm critiquing too hard because I didn't actually really enjoy the book. It was very young adult sort of style, writing style, themes, rather than, what I typically gravitate to, which is a little bit more of a mature kind of tone. However, I think she did a good job. There was a lot of emotion in her voice. She was pretty good at depicting different characters. You could tell who was who. I didn't have any confusion about who was speaking at the time. So overall, a well done audiobook, just not really a book I cared that much about. And finally, Succubus Blues by Rochelle Mead. This is another urban fantasy, and it's definitely modern. And the narrator for that is Elizabeth Rogers. She is fantastic. I love her voice. She's great at doing different characters, especially male characters. Like, she really nails the accents and the voice inflections and, the deepness of the male voice. I was really impressed and really satisfied so far with that series. I'm currently listening to book 2 of that, or I will be at some point after I finish Curse So Dark and Lonely. Okay guys, well that's all I have today in terms of discussing my favorite fantasy/romance audiobooks of the year. Eventually I will likely discuss LGBTQ titles with you. However, I'm hoping next week I'll be discussing From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout with you. Until then, I hope you are safe and healthy. Wash your hands, wear your mask, socially distance, and just remember to consider each other during this uncertain time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful Friday.